It has been a quiet offseason for the Philadelphia 76ers, perhaps too quiet. Could Daryl Morey have one more trick up his sleeve before the opening day roster is set and training camp begins to kick off? As we have some new whispers, some new reports, some new buzz of Kelly Oubre Jr. and Andre Drummond potentially set to be on the move. This is coming from Jake Fischer, who broke down a couple different theories and kind of talked through the thought process of how this got here. These are two guys who control their destiny, that are back on the Sixers by their own choice there, that each of these members had player options. This was not a situation in which Daryl Morey said, I want you back on the roster. These guys each controlled it. Now, granted, Daryl Morey handed them the contract this past offseason, and that player option a bit of a negotiating tool to make sure that they would sign on board. But I do want to highlight what exactly we know to this point, talk through the thought process and why this could make some sense, and if this would be the right opportunity to do it. So let's get right into things here, and do want to start off with the initial quote that did pop out here. Shout out to our guy Jacob Moreno, who says, quote, there has been buzz all summer about the Sixers looking to potentially move one of, if not both, Andre Drummond or Kelly Oubre Jr. Now, this is not a new theory that we've heard. These are both guys that we've seen pop up in some trade rumors and conversation in the past. I would say more so Drummond than Oubre specifically, but both guys that I do think fit the bill. Why exactly that is the case there has far more to do with the salary cap number than anything about their talents individually. And why do I say that here is as I pull up these salary cap numbers, that of course, so much of the contractual obligations are committed to Joel Embiid, Paul George, and Tyrese Maxey. When you have such a high percentage of the salary cap committed to stars like that, you have to nail it in the lower levels. And these are two guys taking up a little bit more of the portion of the salary cap than probably their talent level could command here. Why do I say that there? Is Kelly Oubre Jr. on the books for $8.3 million this year. Andre Drummond not far behind him with $5 million. I do think objectively, I think Oubre is in a bit of a different conversation. So I guess to break them down to two, for Drummond specifically, I don't think there is any chance that if he were on the open market and a free agent this year, that he would be getting $5 million to play basketball in the NBA. And the reason that I say that, to highlight the stats that we saw last year, he played 18.8 minutes per game last year for the Sixers team, averaged 7.3 points, 7.8 rebounds per game there, 1.0 steal, 32 years old, and perhaps one of the oldest 32-year-olds that can pop to mind. It feels like this guy's been in the NBA forever, and his game has aged like he's been in the NBA forever. There was a point in time where Andre Drummond was not just a good backup center, but a dominant starting caliber big man of the NBA. Unfortunately, those days were a decade ago, and we do not have that level of talent no longer on the Sixers roster, and it is fair to assess right now it was downright disappointing, the version of him that showed up. Now, to be fair to Drummond, that he did battle a toe injury, he did miss an extended period of time and really never felt his footing, and frankly, every other area of the Sixers roster and just outlook as a team was disappointing as well. So it's unfair to hold him entirely or hold everything entirely against him directly, but nonetheless, he underwhelmed and was not capable of stepping up into being like a starting caliber center the way the Sixers needed him to when Joel Embiid was gone. Now, the more difficult conversation, I would say, with Andre Drummond is what's next at the big man position, because there is still going to be this era of uncertainty for how often is Joel Embiid available. The guy that I think this falls on the shoulders of the most is Adem Bona. Now, to give him credit, I thought Adem Bona made the most of his opportunity last year. Let's not forget that he was the second-round pick coming out of UCLA, and the number one thing that pops when you watch this guy play is the motor, how much he cares, how much he competes playing basketball. And to his credit, and to that point, that he's still doing that, competing over in the Eurobasket currently for the country of Turkey. And this shout out to this tweet from Point Made Basketball that says Adem Bona is on the cusp of a breakout in the NBA level, and he's using the Eurobasket as a jumping point. With his physical 6'10" shoes and 7'3" wingspan, an athletic 40-inch max vertical, he's a problem in space and whenever he's given a runway. And that has been something that has been very evident in the Eurobasket. I won't lie and act like I've been tapped into every single game, but have tuned in a little bit here and there. And one of the things that I think is very interesting about Turkey directly is they're playing him next to Alperen Şengün. And it's honestly looked very good for Bona being the guy that it's attacking the glass, using his athleticism, catching lobs, and sort of playing through Şengün as like a point forward out of the post with a lot of movement around him. It's been some good hoops to watch, and I do think Bona continues to get better. That's the number one thing about him is I think the more he plays basketball, the more he's just going to figure out a little bit, that he's so dependent on instinct and effort level that it does translate, but there's going to be some refinement in his skill set as he gets more of a sample size of what he can do under his belt. He's a perfect basic skill center, and I think that comes off like an insult, but I mean it incredibly as a compliment here. That he's going to block shots, he's going to catch lobs, he's going to rebound as a high level, and that's just about all you have to do as a big man to survive in the NBA. And I do think there's more to Bona than just that. The fake DHOs that it came really relying on in the second half season, where he's acting like he's giving to the guard and all of a sudden attacking the rim himself. If the Sixers believe that Adem Bona is ready to step up into a clear-cut top backup center and a guy that can start games when Joel Embiid is not there, I do think that provides the runway to getting rid of Andre Drummond directly. Now, Kelly Oubre Jr. I think is a slightly different conversation. I do think his market value, $8 million, is completely fair in my mind, and I know there's a lot of Oubre haters in the comments here. For me, I'm sympathetic from the standpoint of I love the athleticism and frame that he has, that he is a true wing in a way that the Sixers lacked for such a long time. Do I wish he was a better shooter? Absolutely. And to highlight what his production were last year, and to pull up Oubre here, is we do have for Oubre directly that he played 34.6 minutes per game last season, averaged 15.1 points, 6.1 rebounds, 1.8 assists, just 29.3% from three, which is the biggest thing that you can hold against him there. But the thing that I appreciate about Kelly is looking at a season like last year, the dude was a straight up professional from wire to wire until the end of the season when a lot of other guys had thrown in the towel. This is a dude that I think when he's in the right role, and I think the role that was asked of him last year and largely of most of his time in Philadelphia, it has been too large for him. But when he is in the right role, he can be very effective within a team. He's not a starting caliber small forward on a championship team, but I do think he can be a bench player or a six-man or something along those lines. And I do want to add that I think he's about the right things, that even this offseason, we have him in the gym working out with Tyrese Maxey and Drew Hanlon, who's a guy who's Joel Embiid's trainer, and there is a strong relationship across the board here. I understand moving on to Kelly Oubre Jr. if there's a better alternative, but I need there to be a better alternative. This cannot be, to me, just a salary dump here. Now, there's a couple different thought processes between why this is motivated here or the potential to look to trade for these guys. And I did want to pull up this tweet from our guy Zach Chavalella of Philly Sports Network here that he says that Jake Fischer with some Sixers notes thinks Quentin Grimes could take the qualifying offer due to Philadelphia's backcourt logjam, doesn't see Philly giving in. And he mentions the all summer long that Philly was looking to potentially move one or both of Drummond or Oubre. Now, that first point, I will say my interpretation of the way that Jake Fischer was talking through things is sort of speaking through the different outlooks. That this was Zach's interpretation, that he believes that Quentin Grimes taking the qualifying offer was more so the direction things are trending. We also have in this quote kind of transcribed here that I also think that Fischer kind of talked through each, that we do have with Grimes. That shout out to Sleeper 76ers that tweets there has been, quote, buzz about the Sixers looking to move Andre Drummond and Kelly Oubre. And it says, quote, if they're able to find a deal for one of those two guys, that would open up some more wiggle room for Philadelphia to be able to pay Grimes a little bit more. Now, I sort of push back against this notion for a couple different reasons. Number one, it's just not as simple that as far as the NBA trade rules that you do have to return some salary. You really can't just dump guys, and there are some hoops that you have to jump through. It's become increasingly difficult with this new CBA, and every specific example is going to be slightly different on what those numbers are in these variations. The other reason that I don't subscribe to this theory is I do think that nothing about the Sixers' current financial situation is going to change what they're offering Quentin Grimes. That they can technically right now sign him to whatever they want and deal with the salary cap repercussions. Now, granted, every penny counts against the salary cap a little bit more than was the case in past years, that it is more important than ever to prioritize flexibility, giving yourself the most optionality possible for roster construction moving forward, and the Sixers are incredibly cognizant of that. They're negotiating against no one right now, that there is not a Quentin Grimes market, that teams cannot just offer him more than the Sixers can because they can match that direct offer here. Teams are also well aware that if they do send in that type of offer, that the Sixers simply can match, and that is all for nothing on their side of things. For the Sixers directly, you can have Quentin Grimes look around. Do you see a market for yourself? And if you are going to take this qualifying offer, the risk that is run here is this is already a guy that's on his fourth NBA team, that spent time with the Knicks, spent time with the Pistons, spent time with the Mavericks there, has been traded 3 times across his 4 seasons in NBA. And if you're taking that type of qualifying offer, that means I'm betting on myself. I'm going to have an amazing season, and I'm going to cash out in the offseason. Can Quentin Grimes really look himself in the mirror and say that's 100% going to happen? That when I look at this roster that has Jared McCain, that has Tyrese Maxey, that has VJ Edgecombe, the 3rd overall pick in this draft, that there's going to be a million minutes for me to just work through my game and get shots up? He did during the second half of the season when it was over from Philadelphia standards, but that's not going to be quite the same case that this year. And each of those guys I just named, the Sixers have significantly more invested in, more reason to believe in these guys as future talent. That you drafted VJ Edgecombe with a 3rd overall pick. You're paying Tyrese Maxey $30 million plus per season. Jared McCain was on pace to be Rookie of the Year and is one season removed from that. We just saw a handful of games of him looking like a potential franchise cornerstone if this is real, what he brought to the table here. None of those apply to Quentin Grimes. That was a guy that was flipped for Caleb Martin, or Caleb Martin was flipped for him to bring him back. Now, he deserves his flowers for being excellent in the second half of the season, but that is also the first time in his entire NBA career that he's put up anywhere close to those type of numbers, that he's been a fringe starter and a fringe rotation player at other places. I do think Quentin Grimes is a good basketball player. This is not me chasing him out of Philadelphia here, but I think it would be an insane risk of him to take a qualifying offer and bet that he can have anywhere close to the market next summer that is currently the case. I do think both these sides will eventually agree to a multi-year deal. I've seen the comparison with ultimately Cam Thomas taking his qualifying offer. Far different situation to me, that I think like Cam Thomas has not been traded 3 times. Cam Thomas has not suited up for 4 different NBA teams, and Cam Thomas does not have players at his specific position in front of him in the depth chart to make this kind of bet on himself. Quentin Grimes, all those things are very different than Cam Thomas here. So I think ultimately that the cooler heads will prevail and that there will be some sort of long-term agreement that matters for both these sides. But for Grimes specifically, the priority at this very moment should be locking up long-term security, getting that high dollar figure. This is the now strike while the iron's hot. You should not be looking to push that off until next summer. So we'll see ultimately what goes down. I do believe a little bit that the Sixers are looking to shop both Oubre and Drummond. I think Drummond the more likely of the two there, but I don't think it has any connection to the Quentin Grimes conversation in there. So we'll see what happens ultimately. We'll see what the belief in Adem Bona, and I do think this is a situation where the actions probably speak louder than words. The Sixers obviously are not going to comment on this, but if there is any sort of Andre Drummond trade here, I think the biggest takeaway should be that is an indictment by the Sixers organization that they believe right now Adem Bona is the better option at backup center. And again, what is the return obviously impacts how we view each of these deals, but I do think it is interesting that these rumors are beginning to swirl. So let me know what you guys think about all that. Drop your thoughts below on the potential of making those type of trades. Do you think it would be a mistake from the Sixers to go down that path, or do you think this is something that they should entertain? Are you more open-minded to trading Kelly Oubre Jr. than myself, which I would venture to guess is probably the case in the comment section based on your guys' past experiences with Kelly. So make sure you're dropping those thoughts below. Appreciate you guys tuning into this video as always. If you have not already, make sure you're hitting the subscribe button to the channel. We are ramping up right here on Sixers Digest as the season is on the horizon, beginning to inch closer. I'm going to be over it from every single angle. So make sure you guys are tagging along with us. Drop a like on this video here. I'll be back. Talk to you next time. Peace.